You're listening to the Assembly Call IU podcast and postgame show, the place where Indiana fans across the globe hang out online after every IU basketball game. Join us for our live broadcasts on Thursday nights and immediately following every IU game at our website, assemblycall.com. That's assemblycall.com. And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another disappointed episode of the Assembly Call, as today your Indiana Hoosiers fall in West Lafayette at Mackey Arena to the Purdue Boilermakers. The final score was 70-55 on a day when Indiana shot 20% from downtown and 38.9% from the free throw line, just simply unwilling to help themselves by taking advantage of the free ones and being able to knock down any threes. The result, a loss. It drops the Hoosiers to 12-6, 3-4 in the conference. And obviously now a huge game looms coming up against Northwestern. Hopefully the Hoosiers are able to do something there and stop this losing streak, because right now things obviously looking bleak for the Hoosiers. I'm your host, Jerod Morris, here with Ryan Phillips and Andy Bottoms, and we will break it all down for you on this edition of the Assembly Call IU postgame show. And let's start this show the way that we start every show, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. The entire second half really felt like just an uphill hike the entire way. So I'm going to go back to the first half when Indiana really had some positive moments. And to me, the one that really stuck out, it was nice to see Rob Phinisee get a start in his third game back. He talked before the game that he was starting to feel a little bit more like himself. And I thought he seemed more like himself today. And midway through that first half, he had a nice little sequence where he knocked down a three-pointer. And this was, I think, after he had missed a couple of them. So it's nice to see him step up and knock that down. Then on the next possession, drove all the way in, scored. It was an and one. He made it. Indiana took an 18-17 lead at that point. It was 6 straight points from him in a big spot after Indiana had battled back from being down 11-2. And it was nice to see him in that moment. And obviously a game he wanted to do very well in, back home. He wasn't from West Lafayette, he's from Lafayette, but still, back there, he wanted to play well. And, this is a stat that is, for the most part meaningless, but I think still notable. On a day when Indiana lost by 15, Rob was +4 in 24 minutes, and I really thought the first half fell apart after he went out with the 2 fouls. That's when Purdue kind of went on their big 6-point run late. They ended up using that momentum then at the start of the second half to build their big lead. But if we're looking for positives on a day when there weren't very many of them, getting Rob Phinisee back to being Rob is so important for this team moving forward, and I thought we saw some of that today. He finished with 8 points, 3 boards, an assist, a steal, and I thought that stretch that he had in the first half when his team really needed it to get some positive momentum, he stepped up and delivered. So nice job today from Rob. Today's Hoosier Proud banner moment is brought to you, as always, by our friends at Hoosier Proud and Home Field. Both brands were started by an IU grad, and all Hoosier Proud and Home Field apparel is designed and printed out of Indianapolis. At HoosierProud.com, you'll find great State of Indiana-themed apparel, plus our official Assembly Call logo t-shirts, all while sending 10% of your purchases to causes around Indiana, like the Hoosier Veterans Assistance Foundation. And at HomefieldApparel.com, you'll find the comfiest and most unique licensed IU apparel available anywhere. And right now, until end of day Sunday, January 20th, Home Field Apparel is hosting a massive flash sale to celebrate IU-Purdue weekend. I don't really know if you feel like celebrating right now. Maybe if you want to drown your sorrows in buying a new sweatshirt, then you should go to HomefieldApparel.com, because they're giving 30% off all apparel when you use the promo code AC Rivalry. That's the letters AC Rivalry, all one word, at checkout for 30% off all apparel at HomefieldApparel.com. And that includes the vintage Bison logo hoodie t-shirt, or hoodie sweatshirt with the tri-blend material, which Andy is rocking here for the show, as well as the IU Champions t-shirt. And again, the promo code AC Rivalry for 30% off at HomefieldApparel.com. Flash sale ends on Sunday. All right, it is time to move the ball, find the open man, and get some opening thoughts from the rest of our team. We will start with Andy Bottoms. Andy, your Bottoms line on this Indiana loss.
Yes, in addition to being comfortable, the sweatshirt is a great thing that you can use to cover your mouth and scream obscenities into while you're watching a game like this. So for anybody that is looking for something, that's a good one to have.
I didn't see that on the product description, but maybe they should add that.
It's
It's
also
like a special feature that not everybody gets to know about, but it is
It's also very, very warm, and so if you're watching a game and getting frustrated, it's great because you'll just lose weight from all the water you'll shed from sweating.
Oh, good. Two added benefits. Fantastic. I mean, this game to me was all down to IU's inability to make shots. The defense was not great at times, and I think they gave up over a point per possession over the entirety of the game. They certainly did, given the numbers that I'm looking at. But 4 of 20 from three. Not very many of the 16 misses were not wide open shots, and free throws, the last time I checked, were all wide open shots, and IU finished 6 of 13 from the line, or no, 7 of 18 from the line, and took a late rally to get to that point. And I think you saw, so many times I feel like we've talked about this, and Archie's brought it up. I think it happened in the Crean era as well, where IU teams, when they haven't been playing well offensively, allowed it to impact everything else that was going on in the game. And that's exactly what happened today. They got good shots, could not make them. And gradually the defense just kind of wore down, gave up open looks, and didn't give up. But the effort level that was there in the middle of the first half, when IU really surged back to take a lead, really went away, because the team just seemed completely devoid of confidence and really unable to make anything happen on the offensive end. And again, I think we're at a point where trying to figure out what the team's identity really is at this point, and I certainly don't know. But they can't survive out performances where they miss this many wide open shots. They can't survive performances like they had from Romeo today, who really just seemed to completely lose his confidence and was looking around at referees every time he didn't make a shot toward the end. And it was it just looks like a team that's broken at this point. And unfortunately, there's not situations in the Big Ten that are going to allow you, to get back and feel better about it, because now you go in another road game to Northwestern, who has struggled, but at least is coming off of a win last night against Rutgers. And then your home game in the midst of this stretch is against Michigan. And I'm not sure if Michigan plays again between the time that they lost today and when IU plays them again next weekend. Presumably they'll have a game at some point in the middle of next week. But just to really, this team looks lost right now and completely, without answers for the things that are problems. And it really, while I didn't think the effort for the most part in the first half rivaled what we saw in the Nebraska game, I think the more that the game wore on and the bigger the lead Purdue got, the more the effort, at least on the defensive end, resembled what we saw against Nebraska.
Yeah. All right, Ryan, over to you. What do you have to rant about today?
Yeah.
Anything? Can you think of anything?
Nothing.
Try really hard. I bet
Not
you'll come
at
up
all.
with something.
Really tough for me to come up with something today. Look, the problems for IU are obvious. It's on the offensive end. I think the defense, it just starts to collapse when they lose confidence on offense. Or Andy sort of alluded to that. I
know the defense gave up points on 5 straight possessions to start the game. So
I mean, well, let's not get into the start. I'm sure we'll talk about that. But the thing is that we've talked about this. When you don't knock down open shots, the defense collapses. Every time IU was driving today, they were driving into a group of players, because Purdue has just collapsed on everything and handed them wide open shots. And people can talk about, well, the offense isn't getting anything done. Like, what are they doing? They're getting wide open shots. They're just not making them. And at some point, it's like, if you don't have shooters, this is kind of what happens. And yes, it's on the coaching staff to recruit shooters. And trust me, they're trying to do that right now. They know they need to have guys who can hit open shots. But, Zach McRoberts was 0-4 from 3, and none of his threes were contested. They were wide open. Juwan Morgan missed. He was 1 of 4. I know we don't expect Juwan to just consistently knock down threes all the time, but he was 1 of 4, and he had 3 open threes that he missed. Same with Romeo Langford. 0 of 3, had 3 open ones. Rob Phinisee had 2 pull-ups that were kind of contested that he missed, but his other threes were open. I mean, Al Durham got some off of reversals that were open and he missed. I mean, I don't expect these guys to hit 80% from 3, but when they're wide open, standing like they're in an empty gym, you should make some of those, at least half of those. Even if you're a poor shooting team, you should make half of those. And then to go to the free throw line and just not be focused enough to make your shots. I realize this team is tired. I realize this team is worn down. It's been a struggle this year. There's no question about it. The injuries have affected this team. There's no question. There's no getting around that. And it's not an excuse. It's the truth. When you can't practice fully, when you can't, keep yourself consistently at game health, it's a problem and it wears you down. But at this point, this team, it is what it is. They have to fight through it. They have to find a way to fight through it and break through and get to that second wind, because that's the only way they're going to advance. They're going to do anything this season is if they fight through that. This season is what it is right now. It's been a disaster injury-wise. At this point, the roster is what it is, and you've got to move past it and figure something out. And that's on the coaches and it's on the players to figure it out. But I hear people talking about, well, the offense doesn't get anything. It's what are they running on an offensive system? They're getting wide open shots, and they got wide open shots against Nebraska. They got wide open shots the game before that. They have to hit them. And at some point, I know everybody used to have a heart attack when Tom Crean would say this. They say, what was the problem tonight? And he'd say, well, we didn't make open shots. And we've got to make shots at some point. And people would have a heart attack. Like, no, you've got to do other things. You have to make shots at some point. You really do. And 4 of 20 is unacceptable when you're standing alone on the 3-point line with nobody within 10 feet of you. You have to make at least half of those shots. If you're not going to do that, you're not going to win on the road in the Big Ten. You're just not. And it doesn't matter what happens.
All right. So you're right about that. You have to make shots. You're also right about the fact, as we've talked a lot about, that injuries are an issue for this team. Okay? But here's the thing. At some point, if you're going to overcome that and move past it, what it takes is chemistry and playing for the guy next to you and digging in and doing that extra that helps you compensate. And I'm not saying that if Indiana had done all of those things that they would have been able to make up for this poor shooting performance and beaten Purdue. But Indiana still, went on the road and gave up, to Purdue 1.129 points per possession. And granted, Purdue's a good offensive team, but this is several games in a row now where that point per possession that Indiana's giving up is up there. And so what I'm frustrated with right now and concerned about is, you can say all of those things, but I think what we would like to see from this team is a toughness and a chemistry and a cohesion of purpose that right now out there on the court we just don't see. And that's why the poor shooting, the injuries, they aren't able, it's not that they're not even able to overcome them. I mean, they just get totally sunk. And it's like they don't have anything that they can fall back on. And it felt like they did, earlier in the season when they would get down and they would come back. And it's like they had that mental toughness. And right now, they just don't have it. And I don't know what the answers are, Ryan, as you said. I mean, it's on the coaches, it's on the players. But, Andy, as you look at it right now, to me, there are things that they can do from an execution standpoint, but at some point they just have to play together and kind of play for the next guy and be ready to make that next play. And they don't seem to me like a team right now able to do that.
Yeah, I would agree with you. They certainly don't look like they're having any fun at all. And certainly winning and making shots is more fun than what's going on right now. But they just don't, it just doesn't seem to take much before things start to unravel. And I don't know, at some point it can't be the injuries, because there are guys who haven't played who there's no reason to believe they're going to at this point. And really, I don't know if it was Fisher or somebody else said before the game that they were, about as healthy as they've been in a while. Now, that's not really saying a whole lot. Duran is still really limited. You could tell, like Robert played a decent number of minutes. Al looked, I think, better than maybe it was, feared that injury might keep him out a little bit longer. Yeah. I mean, at some point you just gotta, it just didn't, it's hard to quantify, but it just didn't seem like there was the effort that was needed to really win the game. And, they made this comment toward the end, Purdue's got guys diving on the floor when they're up 15 points, which is an easy thing to do when you're up 15 points, but it just didn't seem like a lot of fight. Once things really started to get away, at the end of the first half, I think that showed itself at the beginning of the game too. I mean, you let them come out and score on the first 4 possessions coming off of a really poor start. And then, an 11-2 run to start the game and a 12-2 run to end the first half. I mean, you're not 23-4 in those stretches, and really, and again, a chance to really respond coming out of the locker room in the second half. And Purdue scored, I think, on 6 or 7 of their first 10 possessions in the second half. A lot of dunks, a lot of open threes. And then from that point on, IU was never really in the game. So in key stretches where they really need to, kind of, stiffen up defensively and toughen up, like we haven't seen it. You can't argue otherwise. You can argue the reason for it, but you can't argue that over the course of, key stretches in these games, they haven't been able to respond.
No, and what I would say about if you take those stretches out, IU played Purdue pretty much straight up. It's those huge lapses that they have to figure out a way to just exercise and get rid of them. And that's on the coaches as well as the players. I mean, they have to figure out, why is this happening? You have to get down to the micro view of it and think, why is this happening? What is causing us to come out flat? What is causing us to have these lapses for about 5 minutes where other teams just run circles around us? You have to figure that out. And I don't know what the answer is. And I unlike some people, I don't think it's calling out the players in the press. I think that it's something this team has to work on internally and figure it out. We're not in that locker room. We don't know what's going on, but you have to figure these things out. And that's what the coaches get paid for. And so Archie Miller's going to earn his money doing that, or he's going to have a really bad season on his hands.
Yep. All right. Coming up as we continue our breakdown of Indiana's loss to Purdue, I'll point out today's meaningful moment you might have missed, and we will go inside the numbers to highlight the most important statistical notes from this game. You are listening to the Assembly Call. Stick with us. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. I'm Jerod Morris. I'm here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips, and we are picking up the pieces from another disappointing Indiana performance in Mackey Arena as Purdue bludgeons Indiana really for about the final 24 minutes of this game en route to a 70-55 victory. It's time now for today's meaningful moment that you might have missed, and there are a few that I want to point out. One is really a play that summed up the day with about 14 minutes and 30 seconds left in the second half. Romeo airballed the three from the corner. Carson Edwards came right down and drained it in Romeo's face to put Purdue up 15. Indiana airballing a three, Purdue draining one with confidence. That pretty much summed up the one of the big differences between these two teams today. But a couple other that I want to point out in the first half, and obviously, I don't know if these segments went differently, if it would have changed the outcome of the game, but I thought they were big momentum turners after Indiana had played pretty well in coming back from that 11-2 loss. At about the 4:30 mark, Indiana's up 24-21 after a really good stretch by Juwan, who had 6 straight points, had a really big block on Harms, and then Purdue immediately goes on a 6-0 run as Romeo made one of the worst passes I've seen all season, just this lazy little pass to Devontae Green that had no chance of getting to him. It got intercepted, goes the other way. On the next possession, maybe he got fouled, maybe he didn't, but either way, he tried to dribble through traffic, turned it over. And so, after Juwan was really going off, we have, a couple straight possessions, and it's not like, Romeo shouldn't have the ball in his hands, but those turnovers just really killed us and hurt the momentum. And then I thought, to compound that, the last 2 possessions of the first half, Purdue had taken they had a 27-26 lead. They had extended it with a 6-point run to make it 33-26. And for the final 2 possessions of the first half, no Rob, no Romeo, no Juwan on the court. And I was just shaking my head. Why? At that point, we needed something to stop the bleeding, something positive going into halftime. And I get Romeo and Rob had 2 fouls, but get him in on offense. Do offense, defense, and Juwan had no fouls. And I get that he was tired, but I thought at that point in the game, to essentially give away possessions. Duran got the ball in the post, and Harms ended up tying him up, and Durham ended up getting a 3-pointer on the final possession, just kind of dribbled into it. But neither was a good look. Again, I don't know if it changes anything, but I thought those 2 stretches really killed the momentum that Indiana had, allowed Purdue to go in, with confidence at the end of the first half. And I thought those were really meaningful and kind of led to the positive momentum that Purdue had coming out in the second half, Andy.
You really need to work on your sugar coating. You're not staying on brand by being so critical. But
Jesus.
what are you going to do? The Romeo stretch was for me the biggest one, because I think at that point, I don't know what the score was, but and maybe you said it. But IU had really fought back and gotten to a point where they were at least even, plus or minus a couple points. Juwan had really, kind of carried things, scored 6 straight points at that point. Missed a free throw on an and one opportunity, but had scored 6 straight really off of, if you go back a little bit further, there were kind of 3 bad possessions before that. Demezi took that weird runner. Clifton Moore tried the hook shot where they're just begging him to turn to the baseline and he would not do it. And then Devontae has a turnover. Juwan scores those 3 baskets and you kind of feel like, all right, you've stemmed the tide without Romeo. And I didn't, certainly the idea of bringing him back in at that point to not be so disconnected from the game for 17 minutes of, what would have been 17 minutes of action. If you don't bring him back in to say, hey, go back out and start the second half after you've basically been a spectator the first time, it seemed like a spot that made sense to really get him back in the game. But I think defensively, he was so worried to commit another foul that he played timid. And then I think, Nogel Eastern was incredibly physical with him defensively and did a really good job and really kind of threw him off when, a couple whistles didn't go his way early. And at that point, it was the right move to take him out. I did think it was odd that Juwan was out at the end of the half. Even that, dead ball that went out of bounds that was before the shot clock violation, which was, I think, the next to last possession of the half, put him back in during that stretch. The flip side of that is you've got 5 guys on the floor. Somebody has to know there's 8 seconds left. Nobody even looked at the rim until the horn went off. And, the Al 3 at the end was just kind of somebody had to shoot. But it was, those stretches were huge because at the same time, and this is where, struggles offensively leading to issues on the defensive end, Purdue scored on a ton of those possessions there, and it was all dunks and Eastern shots around the basket. And the reality is the Eastern is a guy who, maybe easier said than done. Make him make a shot outside of 8 feet from the basket, play off of him, do the same thing, quite honestly, that everybody's doing to IU and try to force him to make shots where they basically let him get a head of steam going at the rim, which is exactly what he wants to do every time because that's where he's going to be able to score. And I just thought, those stretches were really key. And as I mentioned before, while you would have liked to see a better response coming out of the locker room, that didn't happen either. And really at that point, it seemed that there was, sad to say, but it didn't really feel like there was a chance that IU was going to come back in the game, given the end of the first half and the beginning of the second.
I saw Seth Tao, he's at the press conference, just tweeted, Archie Miller said, I thought Phinisee started to play well before he picked up that second foul. Yeah, he did. And things really fell apart when he went out. And you know how many fouls Rob finished the game with? 2. So I understand a guy gets 2 fouls, you want to take him out, all of that stuff. And I think Archie has been a little bit more open with that this year, playing guys through foul trouble. But I don't know, in a game, well, he did, but that's part of what I'm talking about. Rob's back, he's playing well, you've got a little bit of momentum. I don't think you need to pull him just because he got that second foul in the first half. When you're kind of facing an uphill battle, an underdog on the road against Purdue, things need to go right. And like I said, Indiana really lost momentum after that. So, look, you guys know, I like Archie, but I thought some of the decisions he made at the end of the first half really worked against Indiana keeping the momentum that they had built, and I think that's a shame. I would have liked to see what the game flow would have been like outside of that, but anyway.
I don't disagree with you about his decisions late in the first half at all. I think that I'm sure there's mulligans he wants to have on that. Again, though, Phinisee picks up his second. If he picks up his third on the next possession, we're calling Archie Miller an idiot.
No, we're not, because I've been consistent with it.
No, you aren't. Other people are.
Who cares what the other people are saying? That doesn't make it right or wrong.
Many people are doing that.
What I'm saying is, no, it's the process of the decision that matters, not the outcome of it. And to me, in that point, with Rob playing well and you building some momentum, you don't just take him out. And if he picks up the foul, fine. But maybe he finishes with 3 fouls.
I'll play devil's advocate here. I will say that they built momentum and they were playing pretty well. And maybe that's the time if you have to sit a guy, everybody else has kind of built some momentum. You're heading in the right direction. I'm trying to get through the thinking. I'm not saying it's right or wrong or whatever. I'm trying to get to the basis of the thinking is that, hey, we're playing pretty well right now. We can steal some minutes without Phinisee. It didn't work out. I agree. And look,
that's the problem. Don't steal minutes. Put your foot on the opponent's throat. Try and extend your lead. To me, that mentality, I just don't like. So I'll get off of it. Everybody knows what I think about it.
And
well, it's one thing. I think there's two schools of thought on that. There's one is go take him out when it happens, and then figure out if you can find time to put him back in for a little bit. Kind of what he tried to do with Romeo, which also backfired. But I don't necessarily mind taking him out after the play, but having him sit the remainder of the half, given the complete lack of other options in the backcourt with Romeo also with 2 fouls. I think that's where it gets a little bit hard to figure out.
Yeah, if you want to take him out, like give him the awareness, like, hey, you've got 2, let's be careful out there and put him back in. Something like that, fine. You're right, Andy.
But yeah, I don't know. That was my bigger issue with it, was not the immediate decision, but he was playing well, and he was giving and Justin Smith for, as well as he started. I don't know that he had too many points kind of following his really hot start, but he and Juwan were really the only guys to do much of anything in the first half. I think if you look at other shooting, I think everybody outside of those two was 3 of 13 in the first half. And again, they're open shots for the vast majority.
Any other meaningful moments that you guys have that you want to point out before we dig into a few of the numbers?
Do we really have to go into the numbers?
No, we do.
I'm tempted to come up with something just to put off having to look at the numbers.
It's on the script. It's on the script. Sugarcoat the stats, I believe, is what it says right here. Yeah. So that's what we'll do next.
If you look at the numbers, and let's just dive into the numbers. The first thing I want to say is, you look at the numbers. I'm shocked IU shot 43% from the field. Shocked. I thought it would be in the low 30s. From 2, they actually were 18 of 31, which is unbelievable to me that it was that high, because it just looked like every shot was contested inside the 3-point line. And that's the thing. We've been talking about this for weeks. If you cannot make open shots, every shot you take inside the 3-point line, inside the paint, is going to be not contested by one person. It's going to be contested by multiple people, because they're just collapsing and collapsing and collapsing and leaving that 3-point line wide open. We saw this with one of Tom Crean's teams too. What year was it where they had no shooters with Noah Vonleh?
2014.
That season was a disaster offensively because nobody could knock down an open shot. It's the same thing. It doesn't matter who the coach is, who the player, or what team you're on. If you can't hit an open shot, it makes defending you really easy, because you just play off of the guys and dare them to hit shots. Indiana's got to make shots, and that's, again, on the coaching staff to work with these guys on their shooting. And we've offered many times to come in and help shot doctor, but they haven't. I don't think
we've offered that. I think you have offered.
I've offered that, yeah. But for real though, like, it's on everybody to make these guys feel comfortable from 3 and start making it. That's the modern game. You've got to knock down shots. You've got to hit open threes. And shooting 20% from 3 on the road, you're going to lose. I'm sorry. In the Big Ten against a good team, you're going to lose every time you only hit 20% of your threes, because the other team's going to do better than that. In the modern game, that's going to happen. And you can talk about, well, the offense isn't producing results and it isn't producing XYZ inside, blah, blah, blah. But if you can't hit an open shot, there's nothing you're going to be able to do inside the 3-point line that's going to get you good looks. It's just not going to happen.
Well, and I think you saw that from some of I forget which replay it was. They showed one. It wasn't the goaltend from the first half. It was in the second half. Just had to slip that in. But it was a shot from like kind of through the backboard. But you saw, I mean, pretty much every defender on Purdue has a foot in the paint at that point, just daring guys to make shots. And again, I mean, I'm to a certain extent, the fact that IU shot as well as they did from 2-point range is pretty surprising, given how much Purdue was really, really packing it in. But at some point, you've got to find ways to have guys that can make shots, or you've got to try to do something different offensively, because what they were doing, the screens around the top were not really leading to any meaningful shots in a lot of cases in the first half. I know I wrote that down. So to play offensively the way that they have been doesn't really help. There was one other stretch that I wanted to touch on, and I don't know what the score was when this happened. It was a little bit it was after Wheeler hit the 3 in the second half. Purdue went a stretch of 12 possessions where they only scored 3 times and had 5 turnovers. No, actually 6 turnovers. I'm really good at counting. So turned it over on half their possessions in that stretch. And IU made up 4 points during that stretch. Like that's a decent chunk of the game, a game that had roughly 60 possessions. That's like 20% of the game that IU had a real opportunity to kind of claw their way back in, and never scored on multiple possessions in a row. And Romeo got blocked. He missed 2 other shots inside. He missed 2 free throws, actually got blocked twice, missed 2 shots inside, and missed 2 free throws during that stretch. Like, that was a chance that at least you can put a little bit of game pressure on And so while maybe too lengthy of a segment to be a moment, even in stretches where, and I attribute some of that to Purdue's carelessness at that point, given how much they were ahead, those turnovers to more so than IU's defense. But that was a stretch where, I mean, you give up 6 points in 12 possessions. You should be able to really chip away more than 4 points at the lead, where you're just kind of nickel and diming things to get to a point where you can actually get back in the game. And so there were, even as bad as it seemed in the second half, there were opportunities to get back in the game. And IU never was really able to seize any momentum whatsoever. Really, once that stretch happened that we touched on in the first half, where there were a couple turnovers from Romeo and they scored 3 straight possessions, like IU never had any sense of momentum at any point following that.
The other numbers that I want to point out, Indiana did a better job on the glass. They only gave up 8 offensive rebounds to Purdue. It wasn't great, but it was better. And I thought Zach McRoberts, for a lot of the things that he took off the table tonight, I thought he really helped on the defensive glass. He had 7 rebounds, was really hustling and doing that. His, there's a reason why he was minus 20, and that was the biggest on the team, because offensively he's just not contributing much, obviously, but he did help on the glass, which was a big problem coming in. And the other guy that I want to talk about real quick is Justin Smith. You talk about why Indiana's 2-point field goal percentage was good, Ryan. That's because Justin was 7 for 8 for the day. He was 6 of 7 on his twos. He made that 3-pointer. He had 6 boards, but he also had 4 turnovers. And so what I want to point out about him is, I think you look back at the Nebraska game, he was scared to shoot. Like I don't know if he was scared to shoot or if he didn't have the green light to shoot. One of those. But he was not.
He was scared to shoot.
I don't know that that's entirely true. Actually, I'm not sure that he actually had the green light to shoot. And because he wasn't even looking at the basket. Today, you saw guys like McRoberts, like him, and others look at the basket, and I have to think that was a coaching emphasis for them to look at the basket. And he really responded. I thought he was going to have opportunities in this game, and he did, and he really took advantage of them. But his efficiency in the half court on possessions when he shot the ball and didn't dribble was like 2.25. On possessions where he took more than one dribble that wasn't just a dribble to get himself in position for a jump shot, he was not good. And so this continues to be the dichotomy of Justin when he is getting his offense and offensive rebounds as a spot-up shooter, running in transition, as a cutter. He is very efficient. When he tries to do anything off the dribble and create, he really takes Indiana out of its offense and just tries to do things that he hasn't shown himself able to do. So I credit him and the coaching staff, Andy, for kind of shifting up his mindset from the Nebraska game and him being more aggressive looking at the basket. But I think we've still got to prune out some of those just wasted takes where he's trying to do something off the dribble and he just hasn't shown this season that he's capable of it yet.
Yeah, I did think I thought he did a lot of good things early and really kept IU in it. The shot fake that they showed a bunch of times where really took advantage of the fact that he had made that corner 3 earlier, was able to again, as you said, shot fake, 1 dribble up, make the shot. I did think he played well there, and I think what you bring up with him dribbling, I think that's a point that could be applied to a number of guys, and I think that. Other than Romeo in a lot of cases, and in some Juwan, the amount of dribbling that doesn't really generate any kind of momentum or lead to scoring opportunities is pretty high. I mean, and that was a pretty big, complaint of the Crean era with the, dribble weave out top and all those kinds of things. This team has some of the same issues. It's a lot of dribbling that's not really getting anybody anywhere. And really isn't making the defense move. And when they've moved it with the pass, they had some success. There was another, I forget which play it was, but Jim Jackson even said, he's like, the ball movement was substantially better on that possession. It led to an open shot. There's just too much meaningless dribbling that isn't getting you closer to the rim, isn't trying to get you downhill. It doesn't really make the defense do anything to react. And so I think that's a comment that you're probably rightly putting on Justin, but I think one that could very easily be attributed to any number of other guys on the roster, because the dribbles just aren't forcing, anything you do offensively should be in an effort to make the defense react to whatever it is. And there are too many dribbles in a lot of these possessions that don't really force the defense to do anything. And some of that is the defense not respecting guys to be actually, pull up and make shots. But otherwise, it's just not aggressive movement in a number of cases.
Devontae Green also 3 turnovers in 14 minutes. This was one of his worst games of the season today. Ryan, anything you want to say to close out here?
No, I'm good. We're done.
I think we got Jerod to not talk about stats very much. So that did work, Ryan. So that's a positive to take from.
Classic deflection.
Okay. All right, coming up on the Assembly Call, we continue our breakdown of Indiana's loss to Purdue. We've got to talk more about Romeo. We've got to talk more about Juwan, Indiana's leaders. We will talk about their days coming up here on the Assembly Call. Stick with us. That's next. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. Catch us live immediately following every IU basketball game, plus every Thursday night at our website, assemblycall.com. And while you're there, make sure that you sign up for our free IU Hoops email newsletter. Over 6,000 of your fellow IU Hoops fans are subscribed. It will make you a smarter and more well-informed IU basketball fan. Again, you can get that at assemblycall.com. I'm Jerod Morris. I'm here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips, and we're breaking down Indiana's disappointing 15-point road loss to Purdue today. Ryan, I want to talk about Romeo Langford to start. Now, it's stating the obvious to say this was his worst game of the season. 4 points, 2 of 10 overall, only 1 assist, 3 rebounds, dealt with some foul trouble, so only played 22 minutes. Also had the 3 turnovers. 2 observations that I had today, and I want to see if these fly with what you guys thought. I thought, number one, to me, this was the first time I thought Romeo was really kind of forcing it and trying to do a little bit too much. Now, granted, I think he needed to drive to the basket, and we need some of that from him. But I thought more than I've ever seen him, he really got tunnel vision when he was driving, that not even when he was driving, but when he got the ball, I'm getting it and going to try to get points. And there is a fine line between he's got to step up and assert himself and go get points and not completely be a black hole with the basketball to where it doesn't involve other players. Because I actually thought today the offense really seemed to function better when Romeo wasn't on the court. And I think part of that is just, he's such a talented player and you can rely on him in one-on-one situations to just go get you a bucket. It's pretty easy when he gets the ball for other guys to just stand around. When the plays didn't involve Romeo, I thought the ball movement was better. I thought, you just saw more action. Guys seemed a little bit more involved. And so this is not, I don't necessarily mean this as a criticism on Romeo, although I do think, the fact that he wasn't really driving with his eyes up at anything but the basket creates that. But I think it's, in some ways, a natural kind of outgrowth of just the way that this offense has gone, where it's like we're getting so comfortable that Romeo can just take guys and go get a bucket that people, the offense kind of stops when he gets the ball there. And so I think that's something that we've got to be careful about, because not only does it make us predictable, but it just gets, I think, the offense out of rhythm.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think that there's no question Romeo was shook today. Yeah. This is not the guy we've seen, the confident. And again, he's not an overly talkative, overly emotional guy on the court, but he's always got this calm demeanor, and he's got this sort of almost like an assassin sort of demeanor, just very calm, heart rate doesn't change, which is good and bad, because sometimes you want to see the emotion out of guys. But with him today, you saw him really getting frustrated and really looking to the officials and things like that. And I'm sorry, if you're Romeo Langford and you are who you are and you're this good and you're going to be a lottery pick, you can't have days like today, especially when a team counts on you as much as IU does. And you just can't show up like that. And I people on Twitter were talking about, well, is he even a team leader? Well, he's 19. He's not going to be a team leader in the classic sense. He's going to be a guy who leads by his play. But he's an offensive leader, whether he wants to be or not, and that's. Would you let okay.
Just
right, cutting me off? It's so rude.
Doesn't it stink when someone interrupts you?
I would never do that to you. No, but I think that he leads in different ways, and what I was going to say is he leads by giving other guys confidence by the way he's playing, and that's where his leadership comes from. It's sort of leading the way as opposed to being a rah get in a huddle, pump guys up way. It's by example. And you can't have days like today. Now, I realize, again, Romeo's thing is driving. And when the entire key is filled with all 5 opposing players, it's tough. But if you're going to be a lottery pick and you're going to be that guy, you've got to be able to overcome that and find ways to get to score, find ways to get buckets, and then not let it affect you on the defensive end. We saw him today. He didn't airball that 3. I know people were saying he airballed. I think it hit the underside of the rim. And then he walked back down on defense, and he let Carson Edwards get one off right in his face. And that's that was the end of the game for me. I mean, Purdue was up by a decent amount, but I mean, that was right there. It's like, okay, well, there's nothing left for this team. And so Langford, we all know he's insanely talented. We all know the reasons why he's special, and he is special. And guys do have bad games. It just happens. But at the same time, you can't do that on the road and expect to be successful. We need Romeo Langford to play well in this situation, and he did not. And he's going to need to play well against Northwestern. He's going to need to start to go back to sort of hitting some open threes. And also, we've seen him close out games with strong stretches. He needs to do that earlier. And I've talked about that for a while. I think he and Morgan need to be guys who step up in the beginning of games. If these things are going off the rails early, they need to step up and do something. And if everybody else is flat, they can't be. And I know, look, the slow starts and the long stretches where nothing goes right are on everybody, coaches, players, everybody. But your stars do need to step up and stem the tide at some point in those situations. And if they want to be stars, if they want to be considered stars, if you want to be all Big Ten, if you want to be on a winning team, if you want all these things, you have to take it on yourself and step up and make plays when things aren't going right. And that's something we haven't seen them do necessarily all the time. We see Romeo make plays and be a fantastic player throughout games, of course, but sometimes it needs to happen when it needs to happen. You know, when the chips are down, you need your guys to step up. And I think that's something I want to see more from him. If I have any complaints about him as a player, that's it. And, you know, it's funny because late in the game, he seems to have a lot of confidence shooting the ball from three up until today and just firing from any angle or whatever. But then early in the game, you don't see that from him. So I think that he needs to have that killer mentality from the jump in games. And I think Juwan Morgan does too.
Yes, not even stepping up when the chips are down. It's stepping up when the chips are even so they don't get down. You know, that's part of the problem is sometimes the guys don't get going until we're already down and there's desperation. And that's
and I guess
no
what
way
I
to
mean
win
by that
consistently.
You know you've been having struggling starts. That means you can't do that. You cannot let things just sort of go. I mean, I would love to see on a first possession of the game just have Morgan run a pick and roll with Langford and just every time, just run it. Prove to us you can stop that. And it's two of the best players in the Big Ten. Prove to us you can stop that. When you can, we'll, move to something else. But I think it's also worth noting that one of the best parts about pick and roll is what happens when you run a pick and roll. And I know this is a little inside basketball, but when you run a pick and roll, the best way to stop it is for other people to help, not the two defenders involved with the pick and roll. I mean, the surest way to stop it is for other people to help. That leaves guys wide open on the perimeter. That's where a lot of IU's wide open threes come from. You got to be able to hit those. I mean, you just do have to be able to hit those. So, again, really need to be able to hit those threes to help out Morgan and Langford as well.
Andy?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you talk about, there's a lot of things to hit on. The first, and I mentioned this before, the thing that bothered me the most with Langford today was not missing shots. It was the body language after they didn't go down and asking the referees for calls and not getting back on defense because of some of those things. And I wouldn't say we've seen a ton of that from him this year. Very little. I would say, but it definitely, and part of that maybe is the crowd and the free throw shooting. He'd gotten so much better of late, really struggled. How much, if any of that is due to, the crowd being all over him and things like that, I don't really know. Did he put more pressure on himself? Doesn't really matter. It just was, that stretch in the first half, as we talked about, in addition to the beginning, was what really felt like it swung the game. And at some point, whether vocal or not, there have to be more guys who just say, I'm not going to give up this basket on this possession to turn the game. And I just don't think there's enough of that. I thought there were stretches in the first half when Juwan just tried to put the whole team on his back and nobody else could do anything. And then you see the toll that seems to take on him by the end where he's just completely gassed. And then, maybe that's why he was out at the end of the first half. Who knows? But I think the burden of that is weighing heavily on him right now, which you're the senior, you're the team captain. I get it. That's part of the gig. But I do think that's difficult. And then to go back to your point about the beginning of the game, I mean, IU's first handful of possessions are, Juwan missed a three on the first possession that I think was off like a pick and pop scenario. I may be wrong about that. Romeo missed a 3 on the next possession. The next possession, Phinisee missed a 3. Justin got a putback. The next possession, I think, was another missed 3. That was by Phinisee again. Maybe I missed one here and there, but I mean, that's, it's not while we said, on the show, like, yeah, there's probably opportunities to take more threes. Actually, the fourth possession was a Romeo turnover. I think that was on the offensive foul. That was really the only aggressive play in the first 5, because then you had Phinisee miss a 3, and then you had him get called on the offensive foul where, 7'3" guy plays defense by throwing himself on the ground. But I mean, that's not a lot of aggressive play coming out of the shoot. I mean, maybe some of the threes were not terrible shots, but that mentality coming out of, kind of settling in that scenario for the exact shots that Purdue wants you to take, all the while, Purdue, Edwards drives to the basket. Travion Williams hook shot in the paint where he, just kind of bullied Juwan, which I get. You're trying not to foul. Then Klein makes a 3 on an inbounds play that, nobody really covered at all. Where he's almost at the 3-point line. Edwards makes a pull-up jumper. Most of those were aggressive plays or other scenarios like that. And I think this team just, whether it's the mounting of these poor starts, which really outside of the Maryland game has been a constant drumbeat on the season, but it seems like their response to that is to not be as aggressive out of the chute, which feels like the exact opposite of what you'd want to do to be able to do that. And then you kind of start being unaggressive, and then you're playing on your heels from there because you're 7, 8, 9 points down by the time you get to the first media timeout.
Let's talk a little bit more about Juwan. And this might be kind of an odd statement to make, but Juwan did enough individually to contribute to a winning effort against Purdue, right? 14 points, 6 boards, 5 assists, 3 blocks, 3 steals. He had some really important moments in the first half when we got down 11-2. What settled us down? Juwan, he wasn't getting it in the post. He just went and got it at the top of the key, found a cutting Justin Smith, then made a 3 on the next possession. 2 plays that really settled us in. When we went up in the first half, he had scored 6 straight points. He had some of those stretches, but the irony is it was a good effort, but it's not good enough. Like, because of the limitations on this team, he has to be even better in a game like this for Indiana to win. And in some ways, that's unfair to him. In other ways, it's the burden of a senior, and it's the burden of this roster. Obviously, doing better than 1 for 5 from the line, doing better than 1 for 4 from downtown. And the other thing is, man, he looks tired, and especially, in the second half and for stretches. And it is a little bit harder. You look at Purdue, they have a guy like Carson Edwards that when things go bad, he can just go get the ball and create something. For us, when things go bad, our best offense is to settle things down and get it to Juwan, but he needs his teammates to help him. He's got to get the ball in a good position. He can't just go take it at the top of the key and create something for the most part because he doesn't have that athletic ability. He's not a guard. And that puts him in some difficult situations where he'll have a good stretch, and then, you'll go 2, 3, 4 possessions where he doesn't get the ball. Like in the first half when Romeo had those turnovers, he doesn't get touches, and the game starts to get away from you a little bit. So, Ryan, I think, Juwan did a lot of good things today, but he's got to, it's the burden of this team. He's got to be even better. And somehow, I don't know what it is. If it's trying to get him some defensive possessions where it doesn't have to bang as much, if he just needs to get in better shape, whatever it is, he's just getting tired. And we saw this last year too. And
it's also a tough matchup against a 7.
It is. No, it's our 6'7" center is banging against 6'10". Yeah. I know. That's what I mean.
I think Harms is largely a stiff. I really don't think he's that good. He moves pretty well for his size. I think that's the best you can say about him. And he is able to slip screens and stuff and get open, but he's basically just tall, and that's his talent, is that he's tall, and good for him. He's found a way to use that to his advantage. But I don't think Harms is some devastating post guy that's really going to tear you up, but he's big, and so Juwan can't just go over him. He had to go side to side. He had to pick his spots, and that's tough. But the one thing you got to say about Juwan, though, 1 for 5 from the free throw line. He's been good lately. And this whole team, by the way, have been doing much better at the free throw line over the last few weeks. Just abandoned them today. And some of those misses for Juwan came at key moments. Where it's just you slump your shoulders like, oh, God, come on, make your free throws. And, again, the fact that the paint was packed in and Juwan was able to grab 4 offensive rebounds, I'm still not sure how he did that. because it was usually 1-on-4.
Well, as Jim Jackson said at one point in the first half, it just seems like Juwan Morgan wants it more. And he can't sustain that, but he's got spurts of that in him. And they usually come at important times.
But I mean, look, you look at the stat line. If you didn't watch the game, you look at the stat line: 14 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals, 3 blocks, only 2 turnovers. Considering how much he had the ball, you're like, wow, that's a really a good game across the board. And yeah, it was a good game, but they need way more than that, considering what we got from everybody else today. And that's the real problem, is that he needs help. And there are times where there was one time he found McRoberts. He got doubled. He found McRoberts wide open from 3. And Zach I'm good for Zach to make some shots late. Maybe that builds some confidence. But he found McRoberts. I mean, there's nobody on that half of the floor. And he caught the ball and shot just an awful 3. And I mean, it was the right shot to take, but you could clear. He rose up with no confidence. And it's like, there just has to be somebody else on this team who steps up. Somebody else has to step up, and somebody has to be able to make an open shot. And you recruited a guy like, for example, Demezy Anderson. I think that Archie wants Demezy to get in the game. That's why. And you see the limitations he has today. You definitely
his first play, he didn't know what they were doing on the out of bounds play.
And you see the limitations. Again, a freshman who's not a top 50 recruit is going to have some growing pains and limitations, and he has limitations. But the one thing he can do is shoot. That we know he can do is shoot. And so you can tell that's probably why Archie's been saying publicly, we're going to try and get him in the game more. Clifton Moore, they tried to get him in the game more. The reason why, because he's tall and has length, and that's something we're missing right now with all the injuries. So just somebody else has to step up. And whether that's Rob Phinisee, whether that's Justin Smith getting more of a green light from 3, whether that's Demezy, whoever it is, somebody else has to step up to help those guys, because like Morgan and Langford simply can't do it all on their own. I know neither one of them had their best game today, but you're on the road against Purdue, which is a good team that's been playing really well. You need to step up. And by the way, the coaching needs to be better too. I mean, he needs to find the right spots to bring in a guy like Demezy or Clifton or whoever else. And I mean, honestly, given what I've seen from Deron Davis so far, I think they're going to have a serious conversation about shutting him down for a few weeks and let him just get fully healthy. Like, he just doesn't move well right now. I God bless him for trying. I really for getting out there and trying to tough it out, but he's not ready to be back. So, all of this stuff, what we have to, what I think the ultimate answer here is that this team needs to find a shooter that can knock down open shots and spread the floor and put pressure on that defense to spread out and give Juwan Morgan and Romeo Langford the one-on-one opportunities that they need to.
And look, the bottom line in one respect today, what's Romeo averaging on the season? 19 points. He scored 4. If he gets his average, there's your 15 points right there. So, some things happen today that you need to happen on the road. You need a role guy to step up. Justin Smith scored 15. You need another guy to make a few key plays. Rob Phinisee had 8 points. If Romeo just has a normal game, Indiana's right there in this. And this was a really inopportune time for him to have his most disengaged and I thought just, struggling performance, for lack of a better term. Andy, last word on this, and then let's go to the final segment.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything else to add on that. This team doesn't have enough and doesn't have enough to be able to survive a performance like that from Romeo or Juwan. Had it been had Romeo scored as many as Juwan did, and it went Juwan the opposite. Like, they're not going to survive that scenario. I do think you guys quickly referenced Demezy and Clifton playing more. You didn't see Fitzner today at all. I thought, if you want to look at why these guys aren't playing, I like that. And I texted you guys this during the game. I mean, I like that Archie didn't yank Demezy after, didn't know what they were doing on the inbounds play, really got bullied on the defensive end, and he left them in to try to play through it. And I get it. And I like that. And I think that's what people want. But at the same time, you've got to understand, if that's what you're going to clamor for, that's what's going to happen. These guys, if you want these guys to play mistakes, you're going to be able to watch and see why they haven't gotten more minutes when everybody's pounding the table to see why they haven't played more, which ultimately goes back to the coaching staff knows. Now, they also seem to realize now they've got to make some changes because what is happening is not working. So I'm glad to see that happen and it not just be talking about playing these guys more and actually doing it. But again, Clifton Moore makes a drop step toward the baseline, he's got a layup, and he forced a 8-foot jump hook because that's what he's comfortable with, and that's what he feels like he can do in the game. And Demezi, gives up, easy post position, gives up an offensive rebound to the same guy that takes a shot immediately after not running the right inbounds play. Like, you're going to see why these guys don't play, and so it's fine. So it also can't turn into like, I really wanted to see these guys play, and then the next thing everybody's jumping on Twitter saying they need to pull this guy's scholarship, which I'm sure happened on the Assembly Call account today, which thankfully I was not running. So
I wasn't looking. I was much more disciplined today.
You got to look at it both ways. You can ask for these guys to play, but be prepared to see why they weren't playing in the first place. And if you want to give them rope and hope they can figure it out and ultimately look back on it later after the season. So in some ways, credit to Archie for giving those guys an opportunity and not having a quick hook. But they also didn't really give you a whole lot when they were in the game today for as much as everybody wanted them to play. So it remains to be seen how much they're able to build on that, what that means for Fitzner. Does he, kind of rebound from this and get minutes? I don't think this was a particularly, good matchup for him for the most part, just in terms of the physicality of the game. We've kind of talked about that a little bit. Maybe he can pull guys away from the basket. But I thought Juwan early did a good job of getting Travion Williams in foul trouble. He'd been really impactful for Purdue, but wasn't a guy that was going to be able to guard a guy like Juwan that can put the ball on the floor and go to the basket. So he did a good job with that. But then you turn to Harms, who's a little bit more mobile, and presents a little bit more of a challenge to shoot over. So
that was a much nicer way to describe Matt Harms than what Ryan did.
Well, I had a lot
of much more charitable.
He might be, but he's 6 of 8 from the floor. If you told me that IU could bring a guy off the bench that could make 6 of 8 shots, you'd be pretty damn excited about it.
Yeah, I'd love it. Matt Harms is
the way he chooses to play defense and act like he got hit by a truck every time there's physical contact on him, I could do without. But
here's the thing about Matt Harms:
being able to cut to the basket and actually finish.
Here's the thing about Matt Harms: he's 7'3" and has figured out how to use that to his advantage. God bless him. He doesn't have a whole lot of discernible basketball skill. That's what I mean when I say a stiff. He's just a big, tall guy who can catch the ball an inch from the hoop and dunk it. If we had a guy who could do that, I'd be fired up. I'm not ripping him for that. I just don't think he's got a whole lot of basketball skill. Now, he's making it work for him. God bless him. But it's not one of those guys you go into the game and you're like, oh man, we really got to shut down Harms. Like you just kind of bump him off the block and he
rolls to the basket unimpeded for a dunk. Yeah, we saw that.
He weighs about 4 pounds, and the stiff breeze will blow him over. But he can dunk it. So, I would love to have a 7'3" guy who would just get in the way. That would be fantastic.
Why am I arguing in favor of this guy? We need to go to a break.
I have no idea what you're doing.
Way to lose with class, Phillips. Way to lose with class.
He's a stiff, but he did well today. Good job.
All right, coming up in our final segment, we hand out our game ball, hit any other storylines we haven't hit, and then in last call, we'll deliver our final thoughts on Indiana's loss to Purdue. You've entered the no sugarcoating zone. Stick with us here on the Assembly Call. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. I'm Jerod Morris. I'm here with Andy Bottoms and Ryan Phillips, and we are wrapping up our disappointed and frustrated and slightly exasperated postgame show here, talking about the Purdue loss. Indiana loses by 15 at Mackey Arena. Guys, it's time to hand out some game balls. I'll jump in and go first with this one. I'm giving mine to Juwan Morgan for a lot of the reasons that I mentioned before. I thought he had some stretches in the first half when Indiana really needed someone to step up, and he was that guy. And I think he did enough, if enough other guys had stepped up, to contribute to a winning effort today in Mackey Arena. It wasn't. Indiana lost by 15, but on a day when there weren't a ton of individual performances that stood out. Justin Smith's is maybe another one that you could argue for, but I didn't think defensively he was as locked in as we've seen him. And so I'm going to give the edge to Juwan. He gets my game ball. Andy, who gets yours?
I think it's kind of those two guys, or those are really the only options. I guess I'll lean Juwan as well. I think just if you look across the total stat line and felt, at least for the longest stretches of the game, the guy who I said, somebody's going to stand up and say, hey, I'm not giving up a bucket here. But I don't know that you could argue with either of those two guys, but it's definitely, I'd struggle to think of a third option.
Well, you're both wrong. It's Justin Smith. Because when things are going poorly in the beginning, I mean, IU would have been down 25 if not for Justin Smith early in the game. So there's the only reason it was a game heading into as we approached halftime was because of Justin Smith. I thought that he knocked out some shots. I thought it was great to see 7 of 8 from the field. He knocked down a 3. He did miss 2 free throws later in the game with 15.6 rebounds. He did have the 4 turnovers late, but a couple of those were. One of them was a pass that he just never really possessed, and they gave him the turnover for it. And he was trying to force some things late to make some things happen. So I don't really hang those turnovers on him too badly. But I thought that his performance, for what it means for this team, that he is getting more confidence offensively with his jumper and with some other things, I think it's huge because they're going to need him. And B, I just thought that if not for him early in the game would have been over before it even began.
Yeah, honorable mention to Rob Phinisee, for coming back and being productive with his minutes too. I think those 3 guys were really the top players for Indiana today. And you're right, Ryan. I mean, it was, if this can be a breakout game for Justin, I thought there were a lot of reasons pointing to him having a good game. Purdue just doesn't have a great matchup for him, and he was able to do some of the things. And I'll tell you the other thing that I really liked about his game is he really ran hard in transition. And I think he seems to recognize how good he is in transition, where he is literally in the 98th, 99th percentile in terms of finishing in transition. The alley-oop pass that Romeo made to him was gorgeous. The finish was gorgeous. He had another play in the first half where he got out ahead of everybody in transition, and he received the ball behind the three-point line, but did a really nice job of stepping through and forcing Purdue to foul him. So his confidence and assertiveness in transition is really helping too, and that's nice to see. And if he can add the mid-range jump shot and the three-point jump shot to that, he could maybe be that elusive third guy that we kind of hoped he would be coming into the season, because Indiana obviously needs that. Any other individuals, any other elements of this game that we haven't hit yet that you guys want to get to? I feel, we haven't talked a lot about Al Durham. It was nice having him out there, and he probably does warrant some mention. He had 8 points, 4 boards, 4 assists. I thought he was aggressive. I think
really aggressive rebounding. I thought
he did, and he was aggressive. Driving in, and a couple times he didn't get calls. He was able to go to the line, and kudos to him because he made 3 of 4. It was a bad free throw shooting day, but Al and Rob stepped up and were 6 of 7, so it wasn't because of them. And Al probably warranted mention earlier in the show. He was injured. Archie said that he was able to practice yesterday. It's nice to get him out there, and I'll tell you what I feel like we've seen from him the last few games is matchups like this that used to swallow him whole. I think he's doing a much better job of staying in the game, finding ways to contribute, finding ways to battle the physicality and assert himself some. And so I was impressed. I thought he did some positive things with his minutes out there, Andy.
Yeah, I did too. I mean, I think everybody came into the game not really knowing what, if anything, you were going to be able to get out of him. And I thought he performed well coming off the bench as a, when you're bringing him in for a McRoberts, if that's who he's subbing for, he definitely gives you a little bit different look. But I thought he was aggressive on the drives, had 4 assists as well, and no turnovers. So in a game that IU, struggled to kind of create, looks for other people, he was one of the guys. He and Juwan had 9 of the 12 assists for the team. So I thought I was relatively impressed with him, and I think it kind of matches a little bit of the eye test with him, I guess, just in terms of his efficiency. I mean, over the course of the season, his offensive rating is over 100 at the almost 105 at this point, which is really pretty solid for a guy who is likely to be your 4th, 5th option. I think there are plenty of games if you say, hey, I get Al Durham to chip in 8 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, you're going to feel, if those are performances, and I think that's what you look at from this game. This is, maybe where the sugarcoating begins. If you get performances like this from Justin and from Al, like those are things to build on for those guys. The problem is this team can't afford, the margin for error is really slim based on the way that they're playing, based on the way the offense is performing, and quite frankly, based on the way the defense is performing. That had really been a calling card earlier in the season. Just isn't a lot of margin for error. So while that's a great complimentary performance from him, there's too little, other guys did too little. You alluded to Devontae a little bit. I thought he had a pretty poor game. I mean, he made the one driving layup, had a couple rebounds, but 3 turnovers, was credited with a couple blocks. I thought it was a really down game for him, as it was maybe a chance to kind of slip back into that. Can he be a change of pace guy off the bench that can provide some scoring and some things like that? Was a difficult performance for him today. And again, one where, he for the game used 21% of the possessions. Like, that's just not a good recipe for IU. And I thought really struggled at times when he was charged with defending Edwards. I thought he struggled to contain him. And those one, he just literally drove right by him. And I know it was at the end. I think it was the one that Edwards missed the dunk on. But I stood there and let him drive right by. So I thought he really struggled. So
if you're going to let him drive by you,
yeah. If ever there was a game for that quote, this was it. But I think we've hit on everybody else. Duran, I think they tried to get him some minutes, but he's just still physically not there. I'd almost be in favor at this point of just let the guy rest and get right.
Yeah.
With Williams, he was a little bit of a better matchup where his lack of mobility because of the injury is not as big of a deal, but he keeps trying to kind of plug him in for a few minutes here and there, and I'm just not sure that's doing anything well.
By the way, the chat mob is very adamant that Justin Smith was the game ball. So they're disappointed in the electoral college voting here that the popular vote did not win.
What
out.
do you know? The people with me.
And
no,
the worst part of
I'm
all
sorry.
that,
I'm sticking with Juwan. I thought Justin was great. I thought Juwan did more overall in this game.
Man of
I would agree.
Does it make Justin had more highlight plays and more plays that stood out, but I thought Juwan overall did more little things that could have potentially contributed to a win if other guys had stepped up. So I'm going to stick with my vote, Andy, but I do want to give you one more opportunity to change it if you want to.
I'm going to stick with mine and even go so far as to chastise people who've done this, because now look at what you've done to Ryan. And that's really the worst part of all of it. I can handle the disagreement. I can respect your opinion. What I cannot handle is the fact that he now feels empowered and emboldened by your support of his selection.
This might signal a turnaround.
I want you to all think about what you've done.
This might signal an important turnaround in the Ryan chat mob relationship, which was very frosty for a little while. But this might signal a turnaround.
You were just making that up to make yourself feel better.
No, that was in there. There are messages that prove it. Can we skip the Northwestern preview? I don't feel like looking ahead right now. We're going to talk about it on Banner Monday, which we're going to do on Tuesday again this week because of the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. So that'll be on Tuesday. The Northwestern game is Tuesday, right?
Yes, it is. It will still take place on Tuesday. I believe it's a 9 o'clock. Tip. I mean, Northwestern they've had some close losses. So, no game in the Big Ten is easy, but yeah, it's a 9 o'clock tip, I believe, Eastern time.
By the way, Chad says, Ryan, bring up Morgan's bad slip screen D. Yes, Morgan got beat on some slip screens.
Yep.
Justin also didn't communicate with Romeo on one play where Klein got an open three, got lost a couple times, and let Grady Eifert get rebounds on him and get open threes. So for every mistake Morgan had on defense, Justin did too. So to me, those things kind of even out.
And we've talked about this before, is that if one guy misses an assignment, it makes everybody look bad. So we don't really know necessarily. I mean, you have to go back and watch the film to see, like, was it actually his fault or was he overcompensating for somebody else or whatever? But yeah, no, it was just bad. It was just bad all day. I mean, there really weren't, it wasn't just one guy having a rough day. But yeah, Harms slipped a bunch of screens on Morgan and had dunks on him. That's how he was getting those points.
Yeah, no, I mean, Juwan wasn't perfect by any means.
No.
Okay, let's go to last call. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Remember that because you're an Assembly Call listener, you get 15% off of your entire order at HoosierProud and HomefieldApparel.com. But right now, until the end of the night on Sunday, you get 30% at HomefieldApparel.com when you use the promo code AC Rivalry. 30%. So go there, get your tri-blend fleece sweatshirt. Andy, do you want to pop the collar a little bit and show people?
I don't want to do that because I'm afraid that Coach Tonsoni will bench me in any kind of scenario, as his stance on popping the collar, popping the shirt is well known at this point.
It is. Okay, so don't do that, but just know that it's a great sweatshirt and you should get it. And if you go to HomefieldApparel.com and use the promo code AC Rivalry, you can get it for 30% off. Okay, let's go to last call. Closing statements on another disappointing loss, road loss, and a disappointing loss overall, and another disappointing loss to Purdue. So a disappointing Saturday afternoon for the Hoosiers. Andy, why don't you lead us off?
Yeah, the 4-game losing streak is never ideal. That goes without saying. It's funny to look back at how each individual loss has kind of been its own its own thing and has they've each been kind of frustrating in their own way, and I think a signal of some definite challenges and some definite things that this team is really struggling with. And I think you can start to see in a game like today, as it really started to get away from them early in the second half, how much of a toll it seems to be taking on them. That being said, they've got to find a way, whether that be coaches, players, whoever is leading the program right now has to find a way to dig back out of this, because there won't just be a layup to be had on the schedule, and we've talked about that and beaten that to death at this point. So they've got to find a way to kind of motivate themselves and get back up off the mat, which I think we all hoped for today and didn't really see at the beginning of the game, saw in the middle of the first half, and then really didn't see, as you said, for maybe the last 24 minutes, where they really just struggled to gain momentum and really be able to string together good possessions defensively and offensively at the same time. That even when they were getting stops against Purdue, they weren't able to score enough. And it's 2 straight games where you scored under 60 points, 55 or less in 2 straight, and even the Michigan game only scored 63. Michigan gets a lot of credit for that from a defensive standpoint, and on a per possession basis, that game certainly wasn't bad. But this is 2 straight that really struggled, and the book is out on IU right now. Guys are just going to dare people to make shots, and help off of everybody, quite frankly, and keep a foot in the paint and force IU to prove that they can make shots. They're going to have to figure out either ways to change something offensively with how they want to get the looks in the lane that they want, or they've got to figure out some guys that can start consistently making shots, or some actions that are freeing up shots for them that they want, because doing what they've done the last 2 games isn't going to cut it against good competition. And so Tuesday becomes a real potential turning point as you get into the Big Ten season, and they've got to find a way to get this win against Northwestern. It's a winnable game, despite how IU has been playing. But if they don't get it, you're really staring down a pretty lengthy losing streak if you can't find a way to get this one. So maybe 1 game is all it takes to get the momentum. Maybe it'll take more than that, but it's got to start there, because just not getting enough on the whole from the team at this point, and they've got to figure out how to dig their way out of it.
Great chat Bob comment. Someone just came in and said, "You guys are still here? You're still talking about this loss? The players are already playing Fortnite." I mean, Andy and I would have been out here a long time ago, but Ryan has just wanted to keep this going on and on. So that's why we're still here. Ryan,
got to get in our requisite quota of sugarcoating, as they say.
Yeah,
so,
that's right. Got to get that in. We're getting paid, so we gotta overdo it. No, what I would say, I guess my last call here would just be that this team needs to come together and figure out. And when I say team, I mean top to bottom, coaches, players, managers, everybody needs to come together and sort of have a come to Jesus moment and be like, what do we want to be this year? What kind of a team do we want to be? And realize that it's not just about effort. It's about being smart. It's about being balanced. It's about being, in this for each other. It's not just individuals going out and, well, I did my job, where's yours? And I don't think that we have kids like that on this team, but I think that it's worth noticing that these guys need to be able to communicate better on the floor. We saw a lot of defensive lapses today because there was no communication. They need to communicate. They need to be able to, attack the defense and have confidence in each other that they can have confidence in each other that they can all succeed offensively. And that means hitting shots. That means, making your free throws when you get the opportunities. I mean, they have to be confident that in each other, or they're going to fail, or they're going to feel like, oh, I've got to force a shot because nobody else is going to do it. And I think that it's just there's a lot of awareness that needs to happen, particularly among the leaders. If we're counting Romeo as a leader and we're counting Juwan as a leader, those guys need to have awareness of when they need to step up and maybe put the hammer down a little quicker. But yeah, just a really, really tough game to watch today, and I think we all feel the same way about it. But hopefully they can sort of get well against Northwestern. I mean, that's not certainly not a walkover game. There just aren't any in the Big Ten this year. So hopefully this team can come together and figure something out for that.
On the one hand, if you wanted to look at what has happened recently with this team and just kind of look at it objectively, you could say that 5 of Indiana's losses have come to teams in the top 17 in KenPom. All games that, quote unquote, Indiana should have lost, right, or could have lost. And so you could say that, and that's fine. The problem is the last 2 have been by 15, and you've been totally non-competitive in the second half. And even though the losses and the metrics kind of keep getting worse with each loss, even more than that is just kind of what this team looks like. And I said this earlier, what allows you to overcome injuries? What allows you to overcome poor shooting nights? What allows you to still go out and grind yourself into the game anyway, whether you win it or lose it? What allowed Indiana to do it even earlier in the season, is an esprit de corps, a togetherness, a chemistry, a cohesion of purpose that right now this team just doesn't seem to have. And I think, that the responsibility for that goes up and down the line, from the coaches to the leaders, as you guys said. And so, Archie Miller talked on the pregame show about, how they really tried to get back to, communication and intensity and having that blue-collar work ethic. It's a sign of where we are that kind of one of the standards for success today was just to see the team come out and play hard again, play with effort after what we saw against Nebraska, but that's kind of where we are. We saw some of that, but not enough. And so, as you guys said, this is really a time to dig deep, really a time for this team to figure out what the rest of this season is going to be, because they have dealt with challenges, and I think those are baked in to some of the losses. But what we've seen over the last two games especially goes beyond injuries, and it goes beyond the bad shooting, and it goes beyond the other stuff. The team feels a little bit rudderless right now. And I don't know exactly what the answer is going to be, but I don't think it's a specific tactical thing that they can do. I don't think there's, you got to play this guy more than that guy. This team just has to come together. And sometimes going through tough times like this can steal your resolve and bring you together, and other times it can break you apart. Right now, the team seems to be cracking more than we all would like, and I think they've got to find some kind of galvanizing event, some kind of galvanizing force to bring them back. Because, look, 12-6, 4 straight losses, but there's still plenty of season ahead, plenty of time to turn this thing around and turn this into a successful season, which is what it looked like the trajectory was, but that has come to a skidding halt over the last 4 days, and somebody, coaches, leaders, somebody is going to have to figure out a way to pull it back onto the track and get it back going in a positive direction, because it's hard to see that direction, at least for this particular team, over these last couple games, and that is very disappointing. All right, that'll do it for us on this edition of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assemblycall. You can also subscribe to our podcast by searching for Assembly Call wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Thank you for listening. We'll be back on Tuesday for Banner Monday on Tuesday, as well as the IU Northwestern Postgame Show. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. And go Hoosiers.
Thank everybody for coming out.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
Thank you for being here and for listening to this episode of the Assembly Call. We appreciate it. And we really do rely on the support of audience members like you to keep our show going and to keep growing. And so we have set up a page on our website at assemblycall.com/support that lists 5 ways that you can support the Assembly Call. And we encourage you to choose whichever method is the easiest and most convenient for you. One of the methods is donating, and so many of you have donated, and we appreciate it so much. On that page, you can choose a monthly recurring donation or an annual recurring donation or just a one-time donation, whatever works for you. And if you don't want to donate, another way to support the show is you can use our affiliate URLs, iutickets.shop or iustore.shop, when you're going to shop for tickets or gear, and we will get paid a small commission when you use those links. But however you support the show, we appreciate it. Thank you.